happen all the time. The question is, how do democracies respond to those scandals?
And what will it mean for the wider region?
I would be surprised if they do. Pardon me.
That's right, carry on.
My apologies. Sorry. North Korea, South.
Hi, Kelly. Nice to meet you. Long time no see. How are you doing these days?
Well, Corona's been pretty difficult, right? The first couple months were tough. We stayed at home a great deal in late February, and then until I think maybe the middle of April, and then the conditions began to improve. So now we go outside more and coming back to work and doing things like this. But March was pretty tough. Our kids were at home and couldn't really go anywhere, and they were running around and had too much energy and got in fights all the time and stuff like that. So March was pretty difficult. But the Korean government did a great job with Corona, and it seems to be in recession. And so now it's easier. Now we take the kids hiking and can go outside and things like that.
That's good. Our situation is improving.
Right.
But I have a question. As a professor, in the Department of International Study, our university, due to COVID-19, you mentioned pandemic. I know that you are doing, the non-face-to-face lecture or online lecture.
Right.
How are your lectures going on? Do you have any difficulty? Your students are happy or satisfied?
I don't know. I don't know if they're happy. I don't think anybody's happy with this. I have the impression that the students understand that this is required, and that face-to-face lectures would be difficult, perhaps even dangerous. I think everyone understands why we're doing this, but no, my impression is that most of the students would like to go back to class. I think they would like the face-to-face interaction. I think online education has been difficult for them. Technically it's not very difficult. Everyone's learning how to do Zoom, and everyone's learning how to use all these various online services. But my sense is that students, broadly speaking, would prefer to be in class to taking their courses at home over the internet.
That's good. While you are giving, on time, real time, the lecture, once again, your kids appear.
Yeah, sure.
That would make a lot of fun. This time, that situation is not happen.
Yeah, so that's why I'm the BBC dad, right?
Yes.
This is sort of my reputation now, right? Every time I go on television, people always send me tweets after. And they say, how come your kids didn't come in and dance again in front of the video? I was just on Sky News yesterday talking about Kim Jong-un. And Sky News posted the video on Twitter. And almost every comment is, where were his children? How come his children don't come in? It's kind of ridiculous now, right? Everybody remembers the video. And so there's a lot of humor because of it. Students know about it. So it's funny. But it's getting a little old. People have been asking me about this now for more than 3 years. So,
how old is your first daughter?
My daughter is now 7.
7,
and my son is 3. Thank you for asking.
So
that's
now
right.
he's
He's 3.5.
Grown
well,
up.
Almost 4.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, so he's pretty big. So they were big enough that Corona was very difficult.
So most of the time they are staying at home with you.
Well, they were, right? So we came back from Christmas vacation in February, and then, because we went to see my parents, and we got back here just in time before the Koreans started to really close things down. We got very lucky, actually. And then when the semester was closed, they had to stay at home. And March was, like I said, quite difficult. They're both young and energetic, and my wife takes good care of them, and they have a lot of energy, and they just couldn't go anywhere, and they were trapped in the house all day, and so inevitably they were running around and breaking things and fighting with each other, and it was just very difficult. I got no work done at all. It's just impossible to work with the kids climbing all over you, and so it's just very good that things are lightening up. So.
But nowadays improved a lot. So
now it's a lot better. Yeah.
From time to time, you can bring them out.
Right. So my son goes to the PNU kindergarten just down the street, our Oranichip, and my daughter just began elementary school.
That's good.
Yeah. Thank you.
So you were born in USA.
That's right. I'm from Cleveland,
and then
Ohio.
you have your degree there.
Right.
You studied at international affairs and
Right.
politics.
Right. So I'm from Ohio, and I went to Ohio State University. Yeah, that's correct.
How did you come to Korea, and how long have you been to Korea?
Right. So I came in 2008. So what does that make it now? 10, 12 years? 10 years?
12
years.
yeah.
And yeah, I simply PNU simply posted a job offer. There's no sort of like special conspiracy or anything like that. No, I mean PNU was recruiting at the time, and I was looking for a job, and I applied.
But in the world, there are many the countries. But why you applied?
That's right.
Korea, you think you saw that at them.
Well, there was the opening, and I had an interest in Asian affairs, and actually did something actually very sort of unique and specific to my situation, which is that one of my very best friends is a Korean, going back 20 years. This was someone I knew when I was at Ohio State, and he had always told me, "Oh, you should come to Asia, and you should come to Korea, and you'll really like it." And so,
Once you come in Korea, then you got your wife, you married,
that's correct. I met my wife here, and we got
and then
married.
you have 2 kids as well.
That's correct.
So are you happy with your Korean staying, or you regret?
Oh my gosh! Wow, big question. No, I'm happy. I'm fine. I mean, if I regretted it, I would have left. I mean, I've been here now for a long time, and
That's good.
no, I mean, it's fine. I mean, I like my position at PNU, and I like the job, and I enjoy working for you, and it's worked out very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, having lived in Korea, you have shared some important modern Korean history, such as the 2016 presidential step down by people's candle demonstration,
Oh, right. The impeachment.
and
yeah.
these days ongoing COVID-19
Right.
Pandemic incident. Whenever this kind of big event happened, you delivered some message with clear fact,
Oh, thank you.
as well as some the prospect to Western media.
Right.
And by doing so, you have contributed somehow for Western country to understand what's going on in our country.
Thank you.
I appreciate and thanks a lot.
Well, thank you.
for that.
I'm trying.
So I'll have some question regarding that. In the beginning, just after COVID-19 spread in Wuhan city, the China as a neighboring state, Korea has been worried much about uprising of then many number of virus infection, but we have been soon under control by self-isolation or self-quarantine, and also keeping social distancing,
Right.
and timely and also appropriate medical care.
Right.
And accordingly, there have been many international phrases for doing
Right.
our country's actions.
Right.
What do you think about this? What kind of key
Right.
actions conducted by our government and also our Korean people do you think seem to be good or appropriate?
Sure. Yeah, there are a couple things I think the Koreans really did right. First, I think there was that once the government decided that this was a major issue, state resources were directed very rapidly towards addressing this crisis, right? Korea has sort of what we would call in political science state capacity. The Korean state can do a lot pretty fast. And that's something where you really see, like in the United States right now, that's just not the case, right? I mean, the federal government is just not acting, the American federal government is just not acting with the speed and coherence and focus that South Korean government is. And to a certain extent, that's just sort of like different cultural expectations about how the state works, right? Korean society is more statist. The Korean state does more in Korean life than the American state does. And I think, a lot of Americans might not like that or something like that, but because of American political traditions. But in this instance, that meant that the Korean state had a powerful capacity to address a major question very rapidly. I think also the fact that you had institutional and cultural memory in Korea helped. That is to say that Korea has had things like this in the past. SARS and MERS meant that Koreans themselves individually and then Korean state institutions had some experience with doing this, whereas the last time anything of this scale hit the West was in 1918 with the Spanish flu, right? I mean, for most Western people, like for my parents back in Ohio, no one has any idea what this is. 2 months ago, their lives were normal. They were going to the store and going to the restaurants, and all of a sudden they're told they can't do anything and can't go anywhere. And I think that's one of the reasons why there's been so much resistance in the West. You have these protests and people saying it's not true and stuff like that. Korea has had some experience with this before. So when the Korean government came out in March and said, okay, you have to stay home, you didn't have a kind of revolt from below like you see, I think, in a lot of Western countries. And I think that's just memory. That's just cultural and institutional memory. And then finally, I think the other big advantage that Korea had in this, and this is me as a political scientist speaking, I guess, is that Korea is very highly centralized, right? When the office of the president made the decision that this was something that needed to be addressed, the whole Korean state basically swung into action on the president's orders. In the United States and in a lot of Western countries that are more federal, where you have more local and provincial control, there's been a big discussion about who is in charge and are the mayors in charge of this or governors or the central government. In Korea, I mean, Korea doesn't really have much localism. Korean mayors and provincial leaders are much constitutionally weaker than the president. Korea is very centralized on Seoul. And that meant that when the national government in Korea said, let's do this, the whole Korean state moved pretty rapidly. And I think my sense is those are the big differences.
But our country is not, we didn't any, do a lockdown or blockade.
That's right.
Blockade. This is volunteer. But I think the civil standard thinking, the civil, people standard are very high compared to other countries, I think. Most of, medical staff are volunteered.
Right.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, and that's sort of a cultural question, and I think there will be some research about that, right? And like, why did the Korean population respond as well as it did? I mean, when the Korean government said to people, stay home and don't socially interact, the Koreans basically did what they were told.
Yes,
that's like a good thing. When you tell that to Americans, they're like, no, I'm going to go to the beach and party. And they did. And so you had all these people in America going on YouTube talking about drinking beer at the beach and getting coronavirus because they don't care. I mean, those are sort of maybe like a cultural question, right? Sort of like, why did the Korean population respond as well as it did? Again, my own reading is this is a kind of cultural memory issue, right?
Okay.
That, MERS. I mean, everybody remembers MERS. It was just 4 or 5 years ago, right? I mean, Koreans have done this before, getting their temperature checked when you walk in the door. Checking your temperature if you walk into a building or a store in the United States, that's actually politically controversial. People don't like that. People think that's the government recording their data. In Korea, people simply accepted that was a required element for controlling this. And that's just... These may be sort of political, cultural differences. Okay,
yeah, plus the political culture, a high standard of civil, ethics or civil spirit, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
So on top of, during this emergency case, we recently had legislative general elections successfully.
Right.
This is really hardworking, from other country, point of view. But I don't think, Western country bravely can, do this kind of massive attendance election in the queue. So we did that, very successfully.
Yeah, that's really. Korea's really turned out to be sort of a model for this, I don't know if Western countries are going to be able to sort of run elections with the same kind of care that was done here. It's actually genuinely, I think, really impressive. My wife, when my wife went to vote, she took some pictures, right? And they made them put on the gloves and wash their hands before they put on the gloves and all these other, temperature checks and everything. It was really actually quite impressive, and I put it on Twitter and people retweeted it. I can't imagine that happening in America. No way.
Okay, in the beginning of our interview, we just mentioned the BBC interview. I remember that on March 10th, 2017,
right,
in your interview with the BBC,
that's right,
regarding the impeachment, namely step down of our president, your two kids were intervened accidentally, and that video clip had been viewed by more than 100 million people all over the world.
That's what I've been told. I don't know. It seems like more than that because everyone knows who we are.
Yeah. You became star together with your two kids.
Right.
Could you kindly remind us your feeling and thought at that time? And thanks to that happening or incident, our university also become
Right.
known worldwide.
Well, I'm happy that it helped the university. It was, yeah, I mean, it was. So there are all these conspiracy theories that my wife and I organized this to become famous.
No, I don't think so.
I know. Well, you don't. But on Twitter, everyone thinks that this was like organized so that we could become famous, like the Kardashians or something like that. No, I mean, it wasn't meant to be like a reality TV moment. It was simply that I had done a lot of television earlier in the day because it was the impeachment of the president at the time, and so I had done a lot of media. I was tired. I had done it. It was like 6 p.m. when I did this, and I simply forgot to lock the door. And you know, my kids are. I mean, they're young. They're impetuous. You know, they're little kids. Little kids do these kinds of things, and you know, we don't want to impose harsh discipline on our kids. You know, if my children want to come into my office and be with me, I want them to feel that they can come to me. Right, the door is not some permanent barrier, and so my kids feel comfortable coming in and. You know, and
That's
the rest,
good.
you know, the rest is all sort of, you know, on YouTube for the whole world to watch forever.
A kind of drama.
yeah. I mean,
Anyway,
people keep asking
recently
me about
also
it.
you had interview last March 26 with the BBC.
Right.
What kind of subject did you talk at the time?
Sure, yeah, just a few weeks ago. So because of the video, because of the BBC Dad incident, I now have this, I don't know, this kind of special relationship with BBC. I do a lot of television for BBC. I go on the network a lot. I mean, everybody knows me because of the video incident. And so there's always interest in my kids and updates and things like that. And since Corona became such a big deal and everyone knew that Koreans were staying home, BBC asked if the BBC Dad family would like to come on and talk about what it was like to be in the Corona lockdown. And, you know, BBC has been very good to my family over the years. You know, I've done a lot with them, and they've taken very good care of us, and they really were very good to us at the time of the video. They didn't exploit it in a cheap way. They defended us and said that it was sort of all lighthearted and appropriate and things like that. So I'm very grateful to BBC over the years. And so we agreed to come back and do this. And so basically we just sat there with the kids and talked about, you know, being at home during Corona. And it was, you know, it's difficult, right? I mean, you could see the kids. I mean, the kids in the video are, you know, running around and stuff. I mean, you can see they're locked in the house for 12 hours a day and they don't know what to do. So they're even on camera, they're running around acting rambunctious.
Well, I see that, you know, the video clips through, you know, the on not real time,
Right.
But it was interesting. Still, your two kids are playing around.
That's right.
And running, jumping, kicking.
That's correct.
That's okay. But
They
now
have a lot
move
of
on
energy.
to next. Okay, we hope and expect that COVID-19 pandemic will be overcome sooner or later.
Right.
Eventually, it will end up. After this, we imagine that many things will change, I think. What do you expect to be the most likely changes and impact on the world economy and accordingly some security in the future?
That is a good question, actually. I think geopolitically, it probably won't change much if this goes away in the next year or so. If this drags on and on and on, and you and I are still having this conversation in 3 or 4 years, then I'm not really sure anyone quite knows what the geopolitical impact will be. The longer this goes, the worse it will be for China, right? Because there is a growing consensus that if the Chinese had told us more in December and January, this would not have been so bad. So I think that's probably, geopolitically, I think that's probably the most important lesson, is that if this goes on and on and on, there will be more and more focus on what did China know in December and January. Economically, again, if it continues, if you and I are talking this way in a year, I think probably the biggest issue will be will be a greater discussion and perhaps a shift towards more work at home. Right? Everyone is now learning how to work at home. Right? Particularly white-collar people are spending a lot of time at home, on Zoom, on the computer all the time. I'm spending much more time in my home than I am in my office than ever before. And I think millions and millions of people are doing this too. And so people are learning that you can, in fact, teach classes over Zoom and things like that. And so I think industries, I think a whole wide swath of industries are going to be affected by people's experience with 4 months, 6 months of at-home work. I myself, as an educator, I have to be honest, I don't think that online education is good for our discipline. I think that learning is basically Socratic. I think that students need to be in a room with professors where you talk back and forth and discuss ideas, and you need that personal interaction. So I actually hope in the future that we do not do Zoom classes. I don't think that's good for our profession, but I think in probably a lot of other professions, I think video conferencing will become a much, much larger part of what they do.
Okay. But we are not, the experts in economy. Do you imagine or expect after Corona, the COVID-19 pandemic, big depression, like, the Second World War, that kind of big depression will follow?
I think at this point it's probably inevitable. It's probably going to take, at least a year for a vaccine, and that's a really, really optimistic assessment, maybe 2. And until a vaccine makes typical social interaction possible, people are going to be scared to spend a lot of time at concerts and festivals and restaurants and things like that. I mean, if you look at the debate in the United States right now, Donald Trump wants to reopen the American economy, and it's because he's very worried about re-election in the fall. Even if he does, even if you open the restaurants and you say people can go back and they can go back to PNU and they can go back to school, I think a lot of people simply won't go because they don't feel safe. And I think that's the biggest challenge, right? Is that states can reopen their economy, states can relieve the lockdown. The question is whether or not people will exit their homes and choose to re-enter the economy. And that will not happen until people feel safe. And people are not going to feel really safe until there's some kind of vaccine. And I think that's probably a year or 2 away. Now, I'm not an epidemiologist, so I don't actually have that knowledge. But as long as people are staying home more and depressing their spending more because they're not going to baseball games, they're not going to concerts, they're not coming to class, they're not going to, like I like to run, and all my races for the next 3 or 4 months have been canceled, or everything is just being canceled here in Busan. So that's not money that I'm putting into the Busan economy by running my races in the city.
Because of that, the government, USA, give money, cash to all the people,
and that will cushion the worst of it. That will keep unemployment from being 25% or something like that. But my guess is that most OECD countries are going to have unemployment in the double digits by the end of this year. 10-15% unemployment, and that means a major contraction. I would be very surprised if that didn't happen.
Okay, what do you think about USA's president leadership? Trump, but from personal point of view, it's unpredictable. But what do you think? He's leading your country well?
No.
So please keep something more.
It's been terrible.
Terrible?
Yes.
In terms of what? In terms of what?
The disorganization, the refusal to support state budgets. The states have been the ones that have really dealt with this the most in the United States, and they cannot. This gets technical quickly. The American states cannot run budget deficits, so they're using up a lot of their revenue right now to fight this, and they're also seeing a massive contraction in tax take. So there's no money coming in and spending a great deal, which means a lot of them need money from the federal government. The U.S. government isn't providing that. And also, I think the president himself personally has provided very erratic leadership. I mean, just 2 days ago, the president suggested that people could drink disinfectant to fight COVID-19. Right? I mean, literally, consuming a chemical.
Changeable.
I mean, this is so bizarre and horrible that it even showed up in the Korean media, right? I mean, my wife is looking on her phone and watching the news and saying, "Did Donald Trump really tell people to drink chemical disinfectant to fight COVID?" I mean, it's the short answer is, quite honestly, it's been an embarrassment. It's been terrible.
Having said that, do you think still he will be re-elected as next president, or failed?
That is, I would say his chances now are about 50-50.
Oh.
If you had asked me 3 months ago, I would say that he would have been reelected. But at this point, given the major economic contraction that will happen in the next 6 months, everyone's going to blame the president for that. And Donald Trump is a personally very polarizing figure. Donald Trump's approval ratings have never gotten higher than 45%, right? So his mediocre approval rating plus COVID, I think, will probably make him beatable.
Okay. Would wait and see, okay? But now, wait and see whether
Yes.
he can be re-elected or not, okay? But now move on to, the North Korean President Kim Jong-un's
good
Italy.
grief.
What do you think? Do you have any
All these hard questions.
real
I have
news?
no idea. I mean, everybody. I did all this TV over the weekend, and people were like, so is he dead? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I know what you know, which is okay. So. I think the reason why there's so much focus is that one, his health is almost certainly poor, right? He is substantially overweight. He's clearly obese, and he clearly leads a risky lifestyle. He smokes a lot, he drinks a lot, and so on, right? The Kim family is sort of famous for wild parties and drinking and a crazy lifestyle. So I think even if he did not have a heart attack or something in the last week, something like this will happen in the future in 2 or 3 or 4 years, right? His children, if he has them, we think he has children. His children are obviously too young to take over, and so that raises the question of succession, right? If he dies or is incapacitated, who runs North Korea? Maybe the sister. But I think that's the reason why there's so much focus. So even if he's okay, even if he's just hiding because of Corona, that's the current rumor. The rumor today is that actually he didn't have a heart attack.
Self-isolation.
Now he's hiding because of Corona. So, I know what you know, because this is all coming from the Chinese media, and nobody knows, right? Somebody says something on, Chinese social media, and then it spreads. But, the North Koreans don't tell us very much about the leadership. They don't like to share this kind of information. Leaders and important key figures in North Korea have disappeared for a while, and then people thought, oh, they've been executed or eliminated, and then 3 weeks later they show up and they're okay. So I'm trying not to speculate.
Okay.
I don't know anything more than you do.
Okay, if the leader of North Korea will have some accident, like he's, almost dead, like that. So the North and South Korea, the security or relationship, can you expect something?
If
abruptly something happened in North Korea,
right?
So
if the leadership passes from the Kim family, I think that opens up room for better progress in the discussions with Moon Jae-in and Donald Trump. I think the sister, for example, Kim Jong-un's sister, is basically a part of the mythology, is basically a part of the traditional sort of Kim family cult. And I don't really see much to suggest that she would be like a Deng Xiaoping figure or a Mikhail Gorbachev figure or something like that. Maybe, but people said this back in 2011, 2012 when Kim Jong-un took over. Maybe he'll be Gorbachev, and he wasn't. So I think as long as leadership stays within the Kim family, right, in the ideological core of the DPRK system, you won't see much change. If, however, the sister were to be rejected, maybe because she's a female, people have said, well, the North Korean elite will never accept a female leader, for example. So let's say there's like some kind of like internal fight and she's pushed aside and the military takes over. If North Korea were just to become like a military dictatorship, like a junta, with like a bunch of generals running the country, they might be more interested in actually normalizing North Korea, because the military probably does not believe in the Kim family cult. The Paektu bloodline and the statues and the crazy stories about how the Kims can control the weather and, write operas and golf hole-in-ones and stuff. I mean, all these, right? That's all sort of Kim mythology, right? The generals probably don't believe that. So I've often thought that if the Kims can be pushed out of the way and the army takes over, North Korea might behave better. That's the best chance I see for change in North Korea.
There are so many possibilities happening in North Korea, but we, as Korean, we want to North and South Korea should be unified in one country.
Sure.
That is our hope, okay?
It is mine as well.
Yes. So, move on to next, subject, okay? So you know the word of serendipity.
Sure.
Serendipity, which means that a great discovery or invention maybe happen accidentally or by chance. As you know, a big discovery cannot be made by chance or the luck only.
Okay.
It needs a lot of effort as well as energy, saving energy accumulated, for a long time. In this regard, it seems to be case with you, Professor Kelly. You have studied for a long time on northeastern, the regional politics and also security, and with your deep and wide knowledge accumulated, you have become a well-known expertise, publishing articles or sometimes interviewing with the global media. Because of that, very reason, BBC asked you to have a live interview during the last the couple of years. Still, you are keeping some interview. So accidentally, your kid appeared.
Right.
So this is a kind of serendipity, I think.
Yes.
So please give me your opinion. In order to achieve serendipity, what kind of thing you have done so far?
Oh, good God.
You did a lot of effort, I think. You need accumulate a lot of energy.
Right. Well, I mean, what is it? I don't know. Didn't somebody say that like luck favors the prepared mind, right? That is to say that, I mean, I was interviewing on BBC. I've been doing media long before the BBC Dad incident, right? So that when it happened, or when my children chose to act out like that, I was already on BBC. I had already done many things with BBC in the past, and so the serendipity of my children behaving that way became important, I suppose, became sort of an issue because I had already been working with BBC for a while. That is to say that sort of like the long effort of my career, underlay was the foundation for the BBC Dad incident, right? That never would have happened if I wasn't on BBC.
That's good. Now you are, become well-known professor internationally and domestically. So still, I want to, I look forward to you to contribute.
Thank you.
To enhance our university reputation.
Thank you.
And also for Western people to understand Korea culturally.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And also a lot of culture and something different from Western Korea. But in this kind of emergency cases, Korean people, they unite very well.
I think they did. They did a very good job on this. Yes.
In the past, the history when Japan came in, invaded into our country, and China came in here, but civil people uprise and then defend our country. That is Korean spirit.
Right.
That kind of thing very important.
Right.
So last now, please give some useful message to our students who are suffering.
Oh yeah.
With the COVID-19 pandemic, they they want to come to university and they play game. But now at home they are listening only lecture.
They're all stuck at home
then,
watching Zoom and playing video games all day.
Deliver message to students and also Busan citizen.
Right. Yeah, so the message to the students is don't get too distracted by all the other temptations at home, right? I think that's probably the biggest problem. I have this problem too, right? I mean, I want to work online, but I can always surf YouTube and I can go watch TV with my kids and whatever. I mean, it's difficult to work at home, I think, because there are many other temptations, right? Your family is there. You can always go get something to eat. You can go watch TV, video games, and whatever. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge. And so for our students, that's the best advice I can give is try to see your workspace at home as a university space because this still is a semester. You still will get a grade. I think most professors understand that this isn't a normal semester, so we're all trying to sort of bend with the students. I know I'm trying to do that too. But ultimately the students will get a grade, right? I mean, the semester hasn't been canceled. It's even though it's on Zoom and no one likes that. And the larger message, I guess I would say to sort of Busan is congratulations, right? I mean, the city's COVID rate is really low, right? There's only something like 100 or 200 cases in the whole city or something, right? It's very, very, I mean, it's
clean area.
yeah, I mean, it's wonderful. I mean, I'm, you know, I go outside and, you know, my wife and I went to a restaurant and we went hiking and stuff like that. I mean, it was, when I talk to like my friends back in the US, you know, my parents and stuff like that, their lifestyle is much more locked down, much more severely constricted than our lifestyle has been here. And a lot of that is because the Korean state responded so fast to this and really took it so seriously. So it's actually much lighter here, I think, than in many other places. I think we got quite lucky.
Good point. Yeah, thank you for your participation today. And I wish you and your family are always healthy.
Thank you very much. You're
and
very kind.
happy. Thank you.
You're very kind. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.